When you walk into the house, no one knows what you sound like. No one knows who you are, what you do, or anything about you, unless you're a vet, of course. I could talk however I wanted to, and everyone would genuinely believe that's what I actually sound like, but that's the key. Everyone will think whatever you give them. So, do you want to give them a southern accent, or do you want to give them something a little more archetypal? Well, of course, you don't have to actually be that person, but what people think you are is really important. So let's talk about it. Welcome to day 2 of the Big Brother Companion. We have on day 2 of live feeds. The house guests have been in the house for just over 100 hours, and I'm so excited to keep diving into new ideas. Today, I was really inspired. I was going to talk about the veto, and then I was really inspired by a conversation with Devins. And it made me think a lot about Big Brother and the entering of Big Brother. Because when you watch vets play, which is not something we get the luxury of doing a lot, it's really useful to see how they play and learn from them because they're the experts. They're the people who can go back and be like, okay, this is what I've learned about what I need to do. And watching Devins, there's a really clear thing he does that Dee is also doing, that Angela's also doing, and these like ways are really impressive, which is this threat level management. It's saying, hey, I'm not a threat to you. Oh, my game, I was a loyal person. I was a trustworthy person. I was an honest person. Like, yes, that is all true. But I'm hiding some other stuff. I'm hiding how good I actually am, right? Oh, look, when I play, like, this is something I used to with my Blood and Clock Tower friends all the time. It's like, when I play Blood and Clock Tower, if I'm good, my team always wins, which is genuinely true. What I don't tell them is if I'm bad, my team also always wins. Um, but like you can tell people things that to like lower your threat level. Like, um, and I think that's one of the big keys is you have to lower your threat man level in this game. And D has to do it, Devins has to do it. People are coming in, like Jason is coming in and being like, Devins is this really smart, strategic, scary guy. People are gonna go in with D within, oh, she won Survivor? That's really hard to do. She must be really impressive. And from a player perspective, from a like newbie perspective, you watch these vets and you're like, I knew these people are scary. And so, what do the vets do to compensate for that fact? Well, often they're really massively discounting their threat levels. They're trying to bring themselves really low, try to bring themselves down to the point of like a wimp or something. They're trying really hard to not be noticed, not be known. And for a lot of them, it works pretty well. For like Dee and Devins and Angela, it's working really well. But I think it goes past that. I think there's something that Dee, Devins, Angela, and a couple others are doing that I think is really important, which I think one of the keys to opening Big Brother, which is you have to paint a canvas of who you are. As I said sort of in the cold open, no one knows who you are initially. No one has a perspective of you. You are a fresh person, unless you're a vet. And even then, a lot of people still don't know who you are in the house because they don't cast enough fans. Um, when no one knows who you are, you can say, you can do, you can be whoever you want. I can pretend to be this big macho broy guy. Now, if I'm not a big macho broy guy, I'll probably have a hard time doing that and coming across authentic. But the goal is to come off as authentic, but past that, you can do whatever you want. Ashley won the game. She talked about being the Elwood. She wanted people to perceive her as weaker than, lesser than. She wanted to come across as ditzy, like she doesn't know the game, like she's not capable. And then later on, she can strike and punch. And Ashley understands this idea of create a canvas, create a picture of who you are for everyone else. Um, One of the things, a great example of this sort of idea is Christian Ubicki was on a Robbins podcast earlier this week, and he was talking about how if he had known better, he would have told Devins to think about archetypal Big Brother archetypes and try to like mentally cast people different things. It's an advantage you have having played the show is knowing the kinds of people that are casting these things. Who is connected? Who is like who? Right? And in this case, Devins, who's played these games before, sees a person like Rome and says, oh, I can pick you up. In a conversation I had, he basically convinces, he basically hypes up Rome, talks about how similar they are. And it's clear that Devins is in his head thinking, well, I know who Rome is. But he's also thinking, I need Rome to see me a certain way. If you know the archetypes of the game, you can portray yourself as a certain archetype. You can sort of change how people view you by underplaying, by picking a vibe that's not what you actually are. But you have to make sure it still feels authentic to yourself. For example, if I were to go in the house, I hope I do at some point, I might come in very like really smart, but really like I'm incredibly honest. It's really hard for me to lie. I don't like lying. I'm smart, but I'm like loyal. I'm smart, but I'm here to fight you because I can't hide how smart. I can't hide the smartness. I will be perceived that way, whether I'm wearing glasses or contacts. People will look at me and go, "Hmm," and that's something I have to be really careful of. But I can use that perception to my advantage by adding this other component. Like, I'm smart, I love this game a lot, but I'm not a very backstabby guy because I'm a big believer that you can't breaking a word in this game ruins your fate in the game. And I can say like, hey, this person lied a lot, this person lied a lot, this person was a backstabber, this person backstabber, and they didn't do very well. So why would I try to emulate those kinds of players? Like I want to play a game that is myself. And I can be like, my favorite player of all time is Bailey from Big Brother Can 11. You know what she was famous for? Being like honest and truthful to her allies, and but like was always really loyal. She was always loyal to her allies, and stuff like that. I think you can lean on that canvas, lean on that painting, whether you're trying to be Elle Woods or you're trying to be some smart guy, or you're trying to be a like the dad or the mom, or I know Corey Wartenberg came on and he wanted to portray himself to be sort of the child, the person who needs help, the person who you can bring under his wing, right? When secretly you're like really dangerous. The key thing is a lot of the best players know what they're coming in as and know what they need to alter to create the perception they want, whether that's sitting on the floor to create this feeling of like you're more than me or you're superior to me and I'm just a little person who needs help, or something a little bit more devious or intentional, like um, actively emphasizing your athleticism by say wearing more not athletic clothes but more like very like tank tops, like showing off muscle. If you're very athletic and you want to hide it, wear a lot of clothes that cover yourself up more, hide the build. Like um I don't if I recall like, I don't recall Xavier being actually I don't really remember, it's been too long. I was saying I don't think Xavier was like walking around shirtless all the time. Actually, it's too late to remember. I do not remember. I don't think Kylan was though, but the key thing is like you can decide how to mitigate your threat level and how to portray yourself as a slightly different archetype or slightly different vibe. Because when you come in the house, no one knows who you are. And I think it's especially important for vets because when vets come in, there is a war over the narrative of their season. I think it is the single most important thing a vet can do at the beginning of the game is obviously you got to play the rest. You have to set the narrative of who you were are coming in. You have a season to build off of. And for people who haven't seen your season, they're going to assume the worst version until you convince them otherwise. We saw this last year with Rachel Riley coming back, where everyone was like, Rachel's the mastermind. She's the puppet person on the strings. And people who watch Rachel's game are like, what are you talking about? That's not Rachel at all. But Rachel has to convince the people who didn't watch her season who she is. She has to create the narrative. She has to drive those things. Otherwise, players will make the worst perceptions. So with D, you're seeing this sort of play out with her like uncertainty, like, well, how do I use the veto? What do I do? I don't know. I don't know my big brother stuff at all. Which is what leads to players like Jason saying, we need to teach D how to play the game. You see players like Devins being like, so how does the veto work? What exactly is the veto? When's the veto comp? Like being like, I don't know. Um, hiding a lot of that knowledge, even though she clearly knows stuff. Because then like he's like, "Do you know what a backdoor is to Rome?" And I was like, "Oh." I think that's really key. I think you also saw Sari do some of that, right? When people would hype up Sari, she'd be like, "Eh," or she'd be like, "Hey, if you're gonna hype me up and you're like talk about how good I am, you got to get out of this house. You got to get out of this house. Let's get this narrative out of the way. Let's make sure my narrative." And she loves, on the other hand, Sari loved when the narrative works in her favor. When it's Sari's loyal to her allies, but and can't win at the end. Ciri's like, oh my god, this is exactly what I want to hear. This is the narrative I want you to think about me. And if you're a newbie playing with vets, you should lean into the narrative and pretend to believe the narrative that the vets want you to think. You need to pretend to be a sheep. You need to pretend to be a lamb being fed their little morsels of falsities or half truths. But in reality, you're ready with the knife to backstab them at the right moment. I think the same thing is true in most newbie vet situations, because at the end of the day, the vets are going to have a lot of control, and you have to be convinced the vets that you're on their side, because otherwise you're playing the harder game. Well, the vets have all these options to work with. You have to like convince all those options not to work with the vets, and also you're playing with worse players who don't know what they're doing as much. It's really hard to do. And so feeding into the narrative is really important. And you're going to watch players like Rome who don't know Survivor. You're going to watch players like Jason who kind of know Survivor, but don't really know what they're doing fully. You're going to watch them tell players like Taylor, tell players like Josh, these like false truths, and those players will go, "Oh yeah, so I understand." So D like doesn't really know what they're doing. Like, they're a good Survivor player, but this is Big Brother. It's like an easy narrative that D's like, if he hears that people are saying like, "Yeah, give it to me." Same is true with Devins. Oh, Devins actually a really loyal guy. It's like, well, yeah, Devins was loyal to his best friends Christian Ubicki and Emily Flippin. I did not hear Rome in that name list. I did not hear Taylor in that list. I did not hear Lyric in that list. No, I heard Christian Ubicki and Emily Flippin. And the same way I'm going to hear Dee and Angela. Like, I'm sorry, or I'm going to hear Barrett. I'm going to hear Drew. I'm not hearing a Rome. I'm not hearing a Mallory. I'm not hearing those voices be like people who Rick Devin's going to be loyal to. Instead, he's going to be going in the DR and being, I'm so good. And to be fair, he is. I watch him gas up people. I watch him talk about how similar he is to other people. Be like, hey, my narrative of who I am is this like loyal, honest guy. I'm goofy like you, but also this like you. Believe that I'm the same kind of person as you. I'm not devious. I'm not these things. You guys have a misread of me. Um, that narrative battle, I think, is actually secretly one of the most important parts of Big Brother. Um, so that's the update. Okay, data feeds, kind of boring. Mallory won the veto, which was awesome. Great for Mallory. I almost said a thing about how the veto tends to be won by nominees week one at like a shockingly high rate, and it's often shockingly the exact target for the block that wins it. In a way, it's like really fascinating to me. Lisa, Derek X, Michael, Mallory, and last year's was Ashley, who goes on to win the season, of course, but had Showergate. And I think there's something really interesting there, and I'd love to dive into it, but not today. I have more interesting things I want to talk about today. Cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another companion. Have a wonderful day and have a good night/morning. Bye.